Welcome back. I'm your host at Navy Legends, and I want you to hold one number in your mind for the duration of what you are about to hear. Not a speed, not a warhead yield, not a range figure. A time, 11 minutes and 40 seconds. That is the flight time of an Iranian Fateh 313 ballistic missile from a launch point in Khuzestan province to a target in the central Persian Gulf. 11 minutes and 40 seconds from the moment the rocket motor ignites to the moment the warhead arrives. In the language of ballistic missile defense, that is not very much time. In the language of a flight deck crew running a launch cycle, it is almost nothing. And on the morning of June 11th, 2026, the men and women of Carrier Strike Group 12 had 11 minutes and 40 seconds to decide the outcome of the most complex carrier defense engagement since the development of the modern Aegis system. They used every second. The date is June 11th, 2026. The time is 4:07 local. The Persian Gulf, approximately 160 nautical miles southeast of the port of Bandar Abbas, Iran, and 210 nautical miles northwest of the Strait of Hormuz. The water depth here is between 35 and 55 meters, shallow even by Persian Gulf standards, with a flat sandy bottom that makes submarine operations nearly impossible, and mine detection relatively straightforward. It is not submarine country. It is not mine country. It is, by the assessment of every naval analyst who has ever studied this theater, ballistic missile country. The USS Gerald R. Ford, CVN-78, the lead ship of the Ford class, the most capable aircraft carrier ever constructed, is operating at the center of Carrier Strike Group 12, conducting high-tempo flight operations in support of Operation Sentinel Reach, the U.S. Central Command's ongoing freedom of navigation and deterrence posture in the Gulf. She is flanked by her screen, the guided missile cruiser USS Lake Champlain, CG-57, the guided missile destroyers USS Ramage, DDG-61, USS Forrest Sherman, DDG-98, and USS Bulkley, DDG-84, and the fast attack submarine USS Connecticut, SSN-22, running submerged 31 nautical miles ahead of the group on the northern threat axis. An E-2D Advanced Hawkeye from VAW-121 is aloft, 220 nautical miles to the north on a racetrack orbit, providing over-the-horizon radar coverage into Iranian territory. The Ford herself is in the middle of a flight operations cycle. Her 4 electromagnetic catapults, the EMALS, the system that replaced steam catapults in the Ford class, have been launching aircraft at a sustained rate for 97 minutes. 14 aircraft are currently airborne. The deck is configured for cyclic operations, aircraft landing, refueling, rearming, and relaunching in a continuous cycle that requires the full attention of approximately 2,200 sailors operating on and around the flight deck and in the associated aviation support spaces. Flight deck operations during a strike cycle are, in terms of human cognitive load and physical hazard, among the most demanding activities conducted by any military organization on Earth. And at 4:07:22, in the middle of that cycle, the E-2D Hawkeye call sign, Nightwatch 2-1, calls a contact. Strike, Nightwatch 2-1. Ballistic launch detection, multiple tracks, bearing 340 to 355, estimated launch point Khuzestan province. Track count, assess 6 to 8 individual tracks. All computing Gulf solutions. 6 to 8 ballistic missiles. Inbound. From Iran. In the middle of a flight operations cycle, the Air Wing Commander, sitting in primary flight control, Fly, on the carrier's island superstructure, hears the call on the tactical frequency. He makes the most consequential decision of the next 60 seconds. He does not stop the flight operations cycle. He expands it. He keys the deck loudspeaker. All aircraft airborne, clear the area, ascend to Angels 15. Recovery suspended. Flight deck, clear all personnel from exposed areas immediately. Clearing 2,200 people from a flight deck in under 3 minutes is not possible. Getting them to covered positions, below the deck edge, inside the island structure, behind any available blast protection, is. The deck's crew begins moving. The aircraft still in the launch cycle hold on the catapults. Engines running, pilots sitting in cockpits now listening to a very different radio frequency than the one they launched to. The Aegis ships of the screen are already computing their engagement solutions. The Nightwatch 2-1 track data is being fed in real time through the Cooperative Engagement Capability, CEC, network, integrating the E-2D's radar picture directly into every ship's Aegis fire control system. This is the architecture that the Navy spent 15 years building. A sensor grid, where the E-2D's long-range detection feeds seamlessly into the ship's weapon systems, enabling engagements against targets that the ship's own radars cannot yet see. The track count resolves. 8 ballistic tracks. The Aegis computers classify the trajectory profiles in 3.2 seconds. 6 tracks consistent with the Fateh 313, a solid-fueled GPS/INS guided short-range ballistic missile with a 450-kilogram warhead and a circular error probable assessed at approximately 10 meters against fixed targets, and significantly higher against a moving carrier, unless the missile carries a terminal phase seeker, which the intelligence community has assessed as a 40 to 60% probability for the latest Iranian variants. 2 additional tracks show a different ballistic signature: higher apogee, longer range, steeper terminal dive angle. These are assessed as Zulfiqar ballistic missiles, a larger, more capable system with a 500-kilogram warhead and a maneuvering re-entry vehicle capability that significantly complicates intercept geometry. 8 missiles, 2 different systems, all computing impact solutions centered on the projected position of the USS Gerald R forward at time of impact. 11 minutes and 31 seconds from now, at 4:08:04, the USS Lake Champlain fires the first SM-3 Block IIA, then a second. She fires 6 in a 48-second sequence, targeting the 6 Fateh 313 tracks in a 2 interceptor per target salvo scheme. Simultaneously, USS Ramage fires 4 SM-3 IIAs against the 2 Zulfiqar tracks, 2 interceptors per target, accounting for the higher maneuverability of the re-entry vehicle. 10 SM-3 IIA interceptors airborne. 8 inbound ballistic missiles. The arithmetic looks favorable on paper. It never looks the same way in the air. The first intercept occurs at 4:10:41. A clean leap kinetic kill on Fateh 313 track number 1 at an altitude of 112 kilometers, 380 kilometers northwest of the strike group. The debris field disperses harmlessly. Then track 3, then track 2. The Lake Champlain's fire control team is working with cold efficiency. 3 down in 44 seconds. At 4:11:17, the first SM-3 IIA targeting Zulfiqar Track 1 executes its terminal correction burns. The Zulfiqar's MARV is maneuvering, a 3.8 G lateral correction at 94 kilometers altitude, followed immediately by a pitch-down adjustment. The LEAP KKV tracks the primary maneuver, but cannot fully compensate for the pitch-down in the engagement geometry. The KKV passes 280 meters above the MARV. A miss. The backup SM-3 IIA, fired 7 seconds after the first, reacquires and executes a modified intercept. At 4:11:29, at an altitude of 81 kilometers, the backup interceptor achieves a partial intercept, striking the MARV's aft body, destroying the guidance electronics and the attitude control system, but leaving the warhead section structurally intact. The Zulfiqar's warhead, now unguided and ballistic, continues on a free-fall trajectory toward the Gulf. Track 4, the second Fateh 313, is killed cleanly at 4 hours 11 minutes and 44 seconds. That leaves 2 Fateh 313 tracks and 1 ballistic warhead section falling toward the strike group. Time to impact, approximately 180 seconds. USS Forrest Sherman and USS Bulkley shift from monitoring posture to active engagement. Both ships fire SM-2, Block 3B rounds against the remaining Fateh 313 tracks. The SM-2 is not optimized for endo-atmospheric ballistic intercept, but it can be employed in a terminal defense role against short-range ballistic missiles at the lower end of their descent arc. The Forrest Sherman fires 6 SM-2s. The Bulkley fires 4. 10 rounds against 2 targets, plus the unguided warhead section. At 4:13:02, the Forrest Sherman's SM-2 salvo accounts for 1 Fateh 313. The missile detonates in a fragmentation kill at 28 kilometers altitude, 140 kilometers northwest of the Ford. The debris falls into the Gulf approximately 90 kilometers short of the ship. The second Fateh 313, Track 6 in the original fire control assignment, survives the SM-2 engagement. 2 rounds from the Bulkley acquire the target and guide toward intercept. The missile's terminal phase seeker activates at 35 kilometers altitude, acquiring the radar cross-section of the Ford below and beginning its final guidance corrections. The first SM-2 detonates in a proximity fuse activation 18 meters from the Fateh 313's nose. The fragmentation pattern damages the seeker head and the control surface actuators. The missile continues descending, but can no longer maneuver to correct its trajectory. It is now ballistic, unguided, from an altitude of 31 kilometers. The unguided Fateh 313 and the warhead section from the partially intercepted Zulfiqar are both descending toward the Persian Gulf. Their trajectories, computed in real time by the Aegis combat system, are being updated every 0.4 seconds. The Fateh 313 warhead section impacts the Gulf 620 meters off the Ford's starboard bow at 4:14:51. The detonation, a 450-kilogram warhead buried 4 meters deep in 44 meters of water before the fuse fires, sends a column of water 190 meters into the air and produces a shock wave that is felt throughout the Ford's hull. No structural damage is assessed. The flight deck cameras record the column rising in the pre-dawn darkness, a white tower of water and spray, 190 meters high, 620 meters to starboard. The Zulfiqar warhead section, inert, guidance destroyed, structurally intact, but no longer capable of a fuse-activated detonation because the fuse electronics were contained in the guidance section that the SM-3 KKV destroyed, impacts the Gulf 1,840 meters south of the Ford, detonating on water impact as its impact fuse fires. A second column, smaller, farther away. The crew on the flight deck who have not yet made it to covered positions see both columns simultaneously against the dark sky. Both misses, both within the zone that with a functioning guidance system, either weapon could have reached the ship. 7 of 8 missiles intercepted or destroyed. 1 warhead section disrupted of guidance. The Ford is undamaged, but the engagement has consumed the majority of the screen's SM-3 IIA magazine. The Lake Champlain has fired 6 SM-3 IIAs. The Ramage has fired 4. Combined, the 2 primary ballistic missile defense ships of the strike group have expended 10 of their SM-3 IIAs against this single salvo. Their remaining BMD interceptor inventory is critically reduced. At 4:16:33, 9 minutes and 11 seconds after the first ballistic contact call, a second Night Watch contact report arrives. Strike, Night Watch 2-1. Additional airborne contacts, bearing 315 to 325. Altitude low, speed subsonic. Assess cruise missile salvo, count 18 to 22 contacts. Iran has fired the second wave. These are not ballistic missiles. These are Soumar cruise missiles, a long-range, subsonic, terrain-following cruise missile derived from Soviet Kh-55 technology with a 450-kilogram warhead and a range of 1,350 kilometers. They have been flying low, 30 to 50 meters above the Gulf surface, for the past 19 minutes, launched from ground facilities in Bushehr province, at the same time as the ballistic salvo, timed to arrive as the strike group's SM-3 magazines are depleted, and the crew is processing the aftermath of the first engagement. The sequencing is deliberate. The ballistic salvo forces the expenditure of high-end BMD interceptors. The crew's missile wave arrives into a defense that must now rely on SM-2, ESSM, and CIWS, systems that are fully capable against subsonic cruise missiles, but that are, for the first time in this engagement, the only line of defense the strike group has. The Lake Champlain and Ramage shift to SM-2 engagement posture. The Forrest Sherman and Bulkley begin ripple-firing ESSM rounds from their Mark 41 VLS. The combat air patrol aircraft, two FO-18Fs that were already airborne when the ballistic engagement began, now cleared to engage inbound cruise missiles under AAWC direction, accelerate to intercept range, and begin engaging the lead elements of the Soumar salvo, with AIM-120D AMR AAM missiles at ranges of 60 to 80 nautical miles. Each AMRAAM can engage one cruise missile. Each F/A-18F carries 6 AMRAAMs on this loadout. 12 AMRAAMs from 2 aircraft. 18 incoming Soumar missiles, timed to arrive in a compressed 3.5-minute window. The CAP aircraft account for 11 kills at long range. The SM-2 volley from the cruiser and destroyers accounts for 4 more in the 30 to 12 nautical mile band. The ESSM rounds account for 2 in the 8 to 3 nautical mile band. The Phalanx CIWS systems aboard the Ford herself, she carries 3 Mk-15 Block IB systems, are active and firing in autonomous mode against the final inbound contacts. One Soumar missile penetrates through the outer defensive layers. Its radar seeker has locked onto the Ford's radar cross-section at 12 kilometers range and is tracking directly. The Ford's own CIWS engages. The Phalanx fires a 0.8-second burst, puts 60 rounds into the missile's flight path at 1,100 meters range. The 20mm rounds detonate the Soumar's warhead in an airburst 880 meters off the Ford's port bow. The fireball is visible from the flight deck. Fragments from the warhead detonation, small dispersed, losing energy rapidly, reach the flight deck and the island superstructure. Several aircraft parked on the forward flight deck sustain minor fragment damage. An F/A-18F on Cat-2, still in the launch cycle with its pilot aboard, takes a fragment strike to the canopy. The canopy does not fail. The pilot is uninjured. No penetrating hit on the Ford. No casualties aboard the carrier. But the engagement is not over, because the Ford's EMALS system, the electromagnetic aircraft launch system, has taken a different kind of damage. The power surge produced by the Ford's own CIWS firing sequence, combined with an electromagnetic pulse effect from the Soumar warhead detonation at 880 meters, has caused a fault condition in the EMALS power conditioning system. The system's fault protection circuit breakers have tripped. The catapults are offline. The Ford cannot launch aircraft. It will take the ship's engineering team 41 minutes to diagnose the fault, reset the protection systems, and restore the EMALS to operational status. For 41 minutes, the most powerful aircraft carrier on Earth cannot put a single additional aircraft in the air. Those 41 minutes are the operational victory that Iran's planners were calculating. The Fifth Fleet commander, monitoring the engagement from Bahrain, immediately retasks the air wing of the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, operating 390 nautical miles south of the Ford in the Arabian Sea, to provide air coverage for the CSG-12 operating area during the EMALS recovery window. The Eisenhower's F/A-18 East begin the long transit north. They will arrive on station in approximately 68 minutes, 27 minutes after the Ford's EMALS is restored. In the interim, the Ford is not defenseless. Her aircraft, already airborne, continue to fly. The ship's own defensive systems remain fully operational. The screen ships are intact. but her offensive strike capacity is frozen, and everyone in the operational chain of command, from the 5th Fleet Commander to Indo-Pacific Command to the National Military Command Center in Washington, is now asking the same question. What is the second wave targeting during this window? The answer arrives at 4:53:04 when Nightwatch 2-1 calls a third contact. 4 Khalij Fares anti-ship ballistic missiles lifting from a TEL position near Bandar Lengeh, targeting, with high confidence, the USS Lake Champlain, specifically targeting the ship that has expended most of its SM-3 inventory protecting the ford. The ship that, right now, has the thinnest ballistic missile defense magazine in the strike group. The Ramage fires her last 2 SM-3 IIAs at 4:53:44. Both missiles track. One intercepts. One misses due to MARV maneuvering. The Forrest Sherman fires SM-2 terminal defense rounds. 3 hits. 3 kills from a 4-missile salvo. The 4th Khalij Fars impacts the Persian Gulf 410 meters from the USS Lake Champlain at 4:55:17. The Khalij Fars warhead, unlike the earlier Fateh and Zulfagar misses, has maintained its guidance to terminal phase. The proximity fuse fires at 3.1 meters above the surface, 410 meters from the Lake Champlain's hull. The blast and fragmentation pattern at that range and that fuse height reaches the cruiser's hull with sufficient energy to shatter every window on her port side, bend the port bridge wing railing, and cause a 0.7 G shock load throughout the hull. 2 sailors on the port bridge wing are thrown against the bridge structure, sustaining lacerations and 1 broken arm. The CIC goes to battery emergency power for 4.2 seconds before the ship's automatic switchgear restores primary power distribution. The Lake Champlain is damaged. She is operational. She has no SM-3 IIA rounds remaining. The USS Gerald R. Ford's EMALS is restored to operational status at 5:33:17. The first aircraft launches at 5:34 and 2 seconds. The strike mission, pre-planned, preloaded, target package built against this exact contingency, is airborne within 11 minutes. F/A-18Es and F/A-18Fs, carrying JASSM-ER missiles, JSOW glide weapons, and AGM-88 HARM anti-radiation missiles, form up and proceed northwest at altitude toward Iranian territory. The target package is methodical. The Fateh 313 and Zulfagar TEL operating areas in Khuzestan province, 3 confirmed launch sites, 2 additional suspected sites, are targeted by JASSM-ER strikes. The Soumar cruise missile launch infrastructure in Bushehr province, 2 launch facility complexes, each covering between 4 and 8 launch positions, takes JSOW impacts. The IRGCN Naval facility at Bandar Lengeh, the operational base from which the Khalij Fars launch was coordinated, is struck by JASSM-ER and HARM rounds, with the HARM missiles targeting the facility's air search and fire control radars. The damage assessment, compiled from F/A-18 post-strike sensor data and follow-on Triton UAV reconnaissance imagery, confirms 4 of 5 Fateh/Zulfagar TEL sites are destroyed or mission killed. 1 site, covered by a hardened shelter that the JASSM-ER's penetrating warhead reaches, shows a secondary explosion indicating the presence of a loaded missile or propellant storage. The Soumar launch complexes sustain significant damage to their infrastructure, but the mobile transporter erector launchers themselves, 8 vehicles in total, assessed from pre-strike imagery, have dispersed to pre-planned field positions and cannot be confirmed as destroyed. The Bandar Lengeh facility takes 4 confirmed impacts. Its radar systems are destroyed. The pier facilities are heavily damaged. 2 IRGCN patrol boats at berth are destroyed. The Khalij Fars mobile launchers, the specific threat that targeted the Lake Champlain, are not located in the post-strike reconnaissance window. They have dispersed. The mobile launchers survive. Here at Navy Legends, the June 11th engagement is the most operationally significant exchange between U.S. naval forces and Iranian military power in the modern era of precision warfare. The Ford is undamaged. The strike group is intact. 18 sailors across 5 ships were treated for injuries, of whom 3 required evacuation for specialist care. No American serviceman was killed, but the engagement proved, in live fire and in real time, the central assumption that has been driving Iranian anti-access and area denial investment for 15 years, that a sufficiently large, sufficiently coordinated, and sufficiently sequenced combined arms salvo can exhaust the SM-3 inventory of a carrier strike group's BMD screen in a single engagement, degrade the carrier's power projection capability during the reload window, and force the operational posture of the most powerful naval force in the world onto a reactive timeline determined by the adversary. The Ford's EMALS was down for 41 minutes. In those 41 minutes, the strike group transitioned from the most lethal offensive force in the region to a defensive formation managing its magazine depth and waiting for replacement air coverage from a ship 300 miles south. 41 minutes. The Iranians planned for it. They executed for it. And they got it. The next salvo, if it comes, will be built on the data from this one. The seeker behavior of the surviving MARVs before intercept. The precise timing of the EMALS fault. The SM-3 expenditure curve of the Lake Champlain under a compressed ballistic engagement. Every one of those data points will be analyzed, modeled, and incorporated into a doctrine that the IRGCN will continue to refine for as long as the Ford-class carriers continue to operate in the Persian Gulf. Deterrence is not a state. It is a calculation. And that calculation is made anew every time by both sides. Stay informed. Stay vigilant. I'll see you in the next one.